Korino Tirakatni. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. I'm very pleased to speak in support of this bill at its third reading. As the Māori electorate member for Hurunui, Kaikōura, Marlborough and Wellington, it gives me great pleasure to tautoko this bill, sir. And I don't intend to traverse all of the details, but I would like to just add my thanks to the Select Committee, the Minister, and the Select Committee and the officials that have been working tirelessly this past few weeks to draft up and tease out all the issues within this legislation. And this is the third in the trifecta of bills that we are doing to address the issues raised by the Kaikōura earthquakes. And so I do acknowledge them for their work, especially this week, and in particular the government members who while working on the bill, had to deal with their own earth-shattering news, but they stayed focused. They stayed focused to the task, and this week, and they were able to come up with a well examined bill, which has some very useful amendments. Sir, this bill is temporary, it is tailored, and it is tightly defined. We're talking about override powers, so we would expect for those constraints to be put in place. And I believe that the Select Committee has done a very good job to put those parameters in place with this piece of legislation. And like I said, sir, this does cover a geographic area. And I am particularly pleased. One point that I raised at the first reading, sir, was the issue around a single iwi representative on the review panel. And I noted the difficulties given the actual number of iwi that were involved in the affected areas, from the North Island right through to the South Island. And I'm pleased that the committee has taken that on board and made the requirements less prescriptive, so that it is actually just ensuring that there is one representative on that review committee who is familiar with tikanga Māori and mātauranga Māori. And I believe that's a sensible way for dealing with those sensitive issues which may arise when a minister is proposing an order in council. And so I do commend the committee for coming up with that very constructive amendment. But sir, just to conclude, tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. there's some buses leaving Christchurch, and those buses will be taking back whānau that have been evacuated by the earthquake. And Te Runanga o Ngaitahu is putting on those buses to take those whānau back home. And I believe, in my discussions with the whānau, they are very, very proud of the way that the Parliament as a whole has responded, and I guess they are very grateful for what we are doing here as Parliament to pass this legislation. But because this directly impacts on those people. But I think by them jumping on that bus tomorrow morning, it's a sign that the recovery is underway. And that is a positive sign for Kaikōura, for the hapu as well, that those families have had a bit of a rest and respite, and now they're up to making the trip back home to start the work that will need to be done to get their lives back to normal, back home in Kaikōura. And so I guess that's what this legislation is all about. So we want to see those affected communities back in business again, up and running again, And this legislation is an important part of all of the suite of legislation that will be needed to do the work that is required. And it's not going to happen overnight, sir. It will be a day-by-day thing, and it probably will stretch into some months, even years, before all of the work is completed. But this is a really important first step, and I am very proud to be a member in this House where we have worked so collaboratively and in a cross-party sense to work on all these pieces of legislation over the past 2 weeks. And yeah, so I'm very proud and I'm looking forward to seeing those works continue, and for those families to be getting their lives back together, back in Kaikōura, so we can see that thriving community up and running and back in business once again. So without further ado, sir, I would commend this bill to the House. Kia ora.